Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be looking at a deck I've been playing all day. I've not only got a infinity ticket with this deck, so climbed through the Conquest gold ladder, but also climbed a lot on ladder itself on normal queue. It's a bit of a weird one. I've had a lot of people ask me questions about this throughout the day, so let's get into it. It is Miss Marvel focused as the key part of the deck, so unfortunately if you don't have Miss Marvel, this deck won't really work out, but if you do, I'll be going through not only the build I use, but also a budget version you could try out if you're missing some of the harder to get cards. First off, as you can see, it is going to be focused around Miss Marvel here. She's of course had the nerf where she needs then 2 cards to be in the either side locations to be able to activate. So a lot of the deck revolves around laying the foundations for that, with multiple 1-drop options, multiple 2-drop options as well, and even the 3-drops before you go into them Miss Marvel and actually be able to fill out and start buffing those locations. Because still, even though she's now a 4/4, it's a little bit harder to get it going, she still puts out a lot of power. To fill out these locations, I have decided to go for a very disruptive package. So we have Nebula as the first 1-drop, pretty straightforward. You get her down early and she hopefully will grow a little bit and just add to that overall power. That's a bit of a no-brainer. Next up though, we have Iceman, because again, just a cheap card we can get down early so we can start just building up those locations for Miss Marvel. And Iceman is just going to be good at just causing little bits of disruption for your opponent, because I feel like decks are getting so streamlined now. Even making something cost 1 more actually puts a huge dent in how powerful some of these turns can be. In the same vein, I will talk about 2 cards that kind of go together here and maybe missing a third if you are wondering, which is the third 1-drop being Korg along with Rock Slide. Now you might be thinking, Raven, you're an idiot. You forgot to put Dark Oak in the list. And I understand that thought, but I did it on purpose. The idea being, I think Korg as a 1/2, if you do want to disrupt your opponent, is good. It does the job again. Another 1-drop you can maybe draw on turn 1. Easy to fill out turns with. And most importantly, to get 2 cards on the side locations. Also, your opponent drawing a rock, whether you have a Dark Oak or not, is good, right? A rock is not a card from your opponent's deck, so a lot of the time it's good, especially helping out even if it's in the deck with some of the Thanos shenanigans. There's been a lot of times between Korg and Rock Slide that the Lockjaw from Thanos is like kicking out a rock, and also Mind Stone will draw rocks as well, which is another positive if it comes out a little bit later in the game. And it's the same idea with Rock Slide. Cheap card we want to get down before we start doing the Miss Marvel things, and suddenly you can have 2-3 rocks in your opponent's deck. That causes enough disruption, even if they have 1 sort of low power turn or low impact turn, that can be enough to really propel you ahead. So I like those a lot. Next up is a card I've been having a lot of fun with, is Quake. The new Quake, swapping the other 2 locations around that she is not played at, is really powerful. It's won me plenty of games, and even in the games where there's no location effects that matter where they are, for example, again, it's a 2/3. She's fairly well statted for for her potential power, and a lot of times I played her on turn 2. Yes, I kind of sometimes rolled the dice on what the 3rd location was and if I wanted to move it or not, but a lot of the times I play her on turn 2 at worst, and she does the job, right? She puts another card in one of the side locations. And that's without even going into all the details of the crazy plays you can do later on in the game. Next up is Cosmo. Not only, again, another card we can get down before Miss Marvel, but also has a few uses. One, it can protect Miss Marvel from the likes of all the rogues and enchantresses I've been running into today. But also, a well-placed Cosmo on the side locations can ensure that you won't be blobbed there. For example, if you Cosmo a side location, it is, unless a Magneto comes down or something earlier on, blob will be 4 power there, which is a big deal, something we need to keep an eye on. So it can stop a Magneto as well. It can stop any of the crazy shenanigans, like I ran into some Annihilus today. It helps with that, of course. So there's a lot of good things Cosmo can do, and I think in this build, when we're trying to get as much out by turn 4 as possible, he does the job. Next up, of course, we talked about Rock Slide. Shang-Chi, it's just a good option. With so many decks at the moment dropping big power early, you can afford to turn 4 or turn 5, sometimes even turn 6 without priority Shang-Chi, and it does enough because by then, the idea is you've built up enough power that if you just kill a big thing, you're fine. Also can be useful on side locations, like I said, if they drop something big, or honestly, I've done it before where it just happens to be my second card played there for whatever reason, and it's because it's a 4-drop, it's not often contesting with the other costs, so it's fine. And next up, of course, Miss Marvel, we know about, it's the core of the deck. I'm sort of talking about Miss Marvel throughout this. Then we have Iron Lad. A well-statted, one of your higher power cards actually, which is pretty well statted, and of course there are some good hits. Most of them are good hits. Quake is a little bit all over the show. Shang-Chi is a little bit weird because sometimes it's good, but it can let your opponent know that you have the Shang-Chi on your next draw. But outside of that, another Miss Marvel, fantastic. Another a Rock Slide, fantastic. Jeff, its flexibility and moving, great. Korg, another rock. Iceman, you get the gist. And then the ultimate really one is sometimes you really want to pull that Doom on turn 6. You have to make the desperation play if Doom's still in your deck. And also preemptively pulling Onslaught so you can set up and know you're going to pump out a lot of power is very strong. Next up, of course, we have Doom and Onslaught, the 6-drop pair. Really, 9 times out of 10, you want to Doctor Doom, right? Because we're adding 5 to each location, and a lot of the time, in some of the harder to reach locations, you may have just Jeff there, or just a Nebula, or just a whatever, Cosmo or something. Then the Doom fills out and sort of shores up the gaps you have. And also, it's just a lot of power, honestly. Doom and Miss Marvel are very similar in power levels, so when they start to stack, you start to do good things. And then Onslaught's there as really just a big backup plan in case you don't draw Doom, or in case you don't have much to do. Onslaught can say, you know what, there's 7 power mid, and then buffing the sides by 5 as well, an extra 5. So Onslaught there, not as used. I would, if I had to pick one to draw all the time, it would probably be Doom. But Onslaught can be useful for surprising your opponent with extra power, because one thing this deck can struggle with is your actual cards don't have a lot of power themselves. It all revolves around Miss Marvel and kind of Iron Lad and Doom. So sometimes they're not expecting you to put out a lot of power in a location, and then you can drop an Onslaught, which again, 7 isn't a lot, but it's probably more than they're expecting. So yeah, that's the idea for the deck. Some things you will struggle with, just so you are aware. I'm surprised, but people still are doing it. People are playing in this big boy meta. People are playing Gladiator still. And Gladiator kills everything in your deck. So it's a little bit rough. If it pulls one of the 1-drops, it's not the end of the world, or a Quake or something. But the fact that it can pull Marvel, it beats Shang-Chi, Onslaught, Iron Lad a lot of the time as well. It's a bit annoying because it's a lot of power to try and catch up to, and you can't really Shang-Chi it, so that's a big problem. Gladiator really is the biggest problem, and then outside of that, the hardest matchup is also, I would probably say, like, not the hardest, but one things you have to focus on really is it's less about the matchups and more about, do they run Magneto? Because if so, you have to really try and focus on either Cosmoing the Magneto or setting up a game plan where you will win anyway. Because if they Magneto to one side, which they will try and do, obviously if you play Miss Marvel, you can still win that side, say if you play Shang-Chi there to kill the Magneto, and still try and have 2 cards in the middle to still receive the buff from Miss Marvel. So it is possible, but you do have to use your brain a little bit, which, trust me, is tough for me. But this deck, as I said, we sort of just breezed through a gold run today where we got an infinite ticket unlocked, no problem. And then I climbed to 1,000 and something on the ladder, which considering I was like 3,000, like that climb takes a while. It's kind of hard, honestly, which doesn't make me sound like a very good player. But in terms of just time played and like relentlessly winning, if it helps, I'm like 100 games in and I've gained like 50 cubes. So it's like half a cube per game. Bear in mind, I've done that whilst streaming. I don't snap properly when I'm streaming. I'm sat talking to chat most of the time. So if you're actually focused and you're probably a lot better player than me, you'll be able to climb even more. So it's a bit of a spicy one here. So this is the build I use, but now we can quickly move on to the build there for the budget build if you're going to struggle with getting hold of some of these cards. And here is the budget build. I've gone through a few different choices here. Nightcrawler in there instead of the Nebula. If you didn't get hold of Nebula yet, sorry, Nightcrawler's kind of useful because he's, again, a cheap one drop you can play, but also you have the flex with Nightcrawler of sometimes you are forced into playing like 2 1-drops in a location, or I don't know, your opponent annihilates something over, or you get a rock there. You can move Nightcrawler away, so it's not too bad actually. He's not going to gain the raw power that Nebula can get, but Nightcrawler is definitely a very flexible card, so one very useful to get. The next one here, I think this is Nightcrawler and Maximus kind of comparatively replace Nebula and Jeff. So if you don't have Jeff, Maximus covers up the power shortage, right? If he's a 2-drop, sure, he gives you opponent cards, but kind of who cares? But the 6 power is significant because Maximus, even plus your smallest card, which would be Iceman, is 8 power, and then you add another 5 there. That is significant for a 3 energy investment on a location, right? And one you can do really early. So although he doesn't have the movement skills of Jeff, the raw amount of power boost might actually help this out. And honestly, thinking about this, Maximus might even be correct in the full list, let's say. Who knows? I might have to try it out. And then, what was the last card? Oh yeah, it was Iron Lad. If you don't have Iron Lad, honestly, I've played a similar deck to this before with Iron Man, and the good thing about this is you can use Iron Man in multiple ways. You can use it to switch on a lane, so if you have like a 1-drop, Miss Marvel in the middle, 1-drop on the left, Iron Man on the left, suddenly, yeah, the 1-drop probably goes to like 4 power overall on the location, but then you add in another 5, which then doubles to 10, right? So suddenly that's a huge spike. Also, it can pull apart your weaknesses to Rogue or Enchantress, potentially, and make them do weird things with that. But also, you can just play it mid and stack it on Miss Marvel, especially if you have a Cosmo down to protect it, and maybe you've got 1-drops and Doom set up, because I think most players don't expect the Miss Marvel location to be the high power one. They always expect the side locations to be the high power coming out of Miss Marvel. So Iron Man can really boost that and help you out there, because they just wouldn't expect, say you've got a 3-drop, like I said, Cosmo, Miss Marvel, Iron Man, suddenly that's like a competitive amount of power, let's say. So yeah, that's the budget list if you want to try that out, and obviously fill those cards in if you happen to have 1 or 2 of them and not the other. You can test these out, but that's it, guys. Again, make sure to catch my stream. I stream pretty much every day apart from Sunday on twitch.tv/RavenHS, and I'll probably be playing this more and more, as well as checking out many other lists with this new meta. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.